En el centro de la pampa vive un pimiento. Sol y viento pa' su vida, sol y viento. Sol y viento pa' su vida, sol y viento.
Hello, I am Patrick Barnard. Welcome to the 111th edition of the Pimento Report. The title of this report is The Woman Who Fights for Trees. Here you see the environmentalist Louise Chenevert, resident of Montreal West, a municipality in the western section of Montreal. She is the woman who fights for trees. In March 2016, Louise Chenevert made headlines by sitting down in front of a silver maple tree on Meadowbrook Golf Course, a heritage tree threatened to be cut down by the provincial utility Hydro Québec. She saved that tree, but only for a very short time, because it soon was hacked down. That silver maple, as well as a number of others, was part of a precious green corridor running north-south, parallel to railway tracks, and right under the power lines of the provincial utility Hydro Québec, which holds a servitude or right-of-way under its transmission lines. Here's another aerial view of this green corridor that is greatly valued by neighboring residents because its green cover provides a buffer to the major train track immediately adjacent. This is Louise Chenevert on May 12, 2016, standing next to one of the maples she had tried to defend. You can hear and see the train going by.
We had, about a month ago, we had actually a two-week standoff with Hydro Québec.
This is the annual general meeting of Montreal's Green Coalition on May 5th, 2016. Al Hayek of Les Amis du Parc Meadowbrook is explaining Louise Chenevert's defense of the maples at the Meadowbrook Golf Course.
I think she nailed herself to a tree, I'm not sure. But for 2 weeks it was a real standoff with Hydro Québec. There were 5 trees on the southern tip of the Meadowbrook Golf Course. We were out there every day.
No, they're like, I have measurements. Some of them are some of them are 60 inches wide. That's 5 feet. I'm 5 feet.
At the annual general meeting of the Green Coalition in the beginning of May of 2016, you talked about putting your arms around, I think, some of these trees that were cut on the Meadowbrook Golf Course. You're standing right next to one of those trees, aren't you?
Yes. This is the tree that I stood in front of when it was raining.
And did they stop cutting on that day when you put yourself in front of the tree?
The first day, yes. I think it was a Thursday.
And what kind of tree was this? A maple?
Silver maples.
Silver maples.
5 of them.
And how old would you say this tree was?
Well, I measured the base. That's 60 inches, 5 feet. That'd be probably 100 years or so.
Here's a question. These trees were here before. Why didn't Hydro simply trim them, prune them?
They did in December 15th. They came and pruned them, and they sent us the committee an email saying that they were securitized and there was no risk to the network at that time.
So why did they cut them now?
They said that they got authorization from the golf course to cut. And I personally called Groupe Pacifique, who is the owner of the land, and they say they never gave authorization to do that. But they had communicated with the owners of the golf course, who actually are tenants of the land.
Now, let me get this straight. Hydro Quebec told you, in effect, that the golf course told them to cut these trees.
Yes.
But you couldn't get confirmation of that. See, what I don't understand is, why didn't they just prune them?
They did.
No, I know, but why didn't they just prune them again? Why was it necessary to cut them down? They even add something to the golf course.
Which is interesting, because if I was a golfer, I would much prefer having a scenic view, tree view, than seeing...
Well, this golf course is famous for its scenic views, so I don't think golfers would have wanted these trees to be cut.
No. And as you saw, the train and the noise and the pollution that is on this corner, these trees buffered that.
These silver maples that were cut, were they within the Hydro Quebec buffer zone?
The setback is about 10 meters, and the closest one is 16 meters, and the one here is 20 meters from the center line. So they weren't in the servitude.
So they were actually outside of the buffer zone?
Well, the servitude, yeah.
Yeah.
And now, in the schéma d'aménagement in, I think, January 2015, the Meadowbrook is rezoned green space. And these trees should have been saved under the schéma.
Louise, we're standing in front of the trees that really got you most deeply involved in this whole cutting issue. Could you tell us the story of these pines?
Well, these pines were planted like 45 years ago by the sons of the owners. And the children were about 5-6 years old at the time, and now they're in their 50s. And so it's like 3 generations of this family cherish this tree.
And about a year ago, you were told what by Hydro Quebec? Before your committee was struck, you were told something by Hydro Quebec about these trees that upset you. Can you tell us what that was?
Well, they were gonna, like, I was asking what the blue marks were, and they said they're going to be cut. I mean, what do you mean cut? I mean, cut to the ground. I go, you can't cut these trees. And everybody that I talked to after, they said, oh no, not the pines. Everybody knows these trees and love these trees. It's like they've become a community tree, because people walk here, walk their dogs, enjoy the trail, and everybody knows, if we say the pines, they know what we're talking about. So,
what is going to happen to them now? Because you did have some effect, I think.
We modified it that they'll cut the tops off. The new regulations, or the new norms, North American norms, are 3 meters from the line. So they're going to use their scopes and measure exact height of the trees and the actual distance from the lines, and they'll cut accordingly.
Do you think that the reversal of the decision to completely remove them was a result of your actions and the actions of citizens like you?
Yes, because in September, if I wasn't here, I didn't hear the chainsaws, everything would have been gone. I mean,
did you hear the chainsaws on that September day?
September 14th, Monday morning, I heard chainsaws, so I ran out here and I was trying to figure out what was going on. Because we did get a letter saying they will be doing some vegetation management, but vegetation management is, they usually trim every 3-4 years, and they do a little, so they can get their trucks in here in case there's an ice storm, and they trim a bit. But cutting things to the ground, I mean, first time they ever painted the trees blue, and I go like, ask the technician who's working, he says, everything is painted blue, is going to be cut 25 meters. I go like, that's more than, it doesn't say that on the paper, doesn't say that on the letter.
On that September day, you said you heard chainsaws. Were they cutting some of this bush that's around here? Or?
No, they're cutting down where the bridge is over there, where we started our walk.
And so when you learnt about these blue marks, you knew that they were probably going to cut these trees on those days, right?
The next couple of days coming up, yeah. In that week. And
so
they were starting there and they were moving down, so within a week everything would have been cut.
So in fact, it now seems these trees will not be completely removed. And there's a white ribbon over there.
Yes.
Who put that there?
I did. Because to me, it's sort of a symbol of, they're like heritage trees. Like I said, they're like community trees. Everybody knows the pines and they're cherished by everybody. And to me, it's a marker, so people walk by and say, why is that ribbon on there? And then I would have a way to explain and people would know. And so it was left over from my niece's wedding, so I had the ribbon, so I said I'll put the white ribbon on. And to me, all trees are sacred, and white is sort of a color of sacredness or whatever. And,
Louise Chenevert, the woman you've been listening to talk about trees, was part of a committee which consisted of citizens, administrators from Montreal West, the municipality, and officials of the provincial utility Hydro Québec. It was all supposed to be a kind of pilot project. But what strikes me as an observer are a number of things about Hydro Québec. First of all, the actions of Hydro appear to be inconsistent and arbitrary. Secondly, they use subcontractors for this cutting and pruning. Thirdly, the subcontractors come from as far away as the Abitibi in the northwest of Quebec or out east in the Gaspé, and their people have experience in the forest, but not necessarily in complex urban environments. And there's a final point. A man who's very well known in Montreal, knows Montreal and Montreal West, told me that he thinks Hydro Québec is still back in the 20th century and hasn't come into the 21st because the provincial utility has not found a way to value the urban environment, natural spaces in the urban environment, while at the same time meeting its own needs. Let's hear more of this story from Louise Chenevert, the woman who fights for trees. So here you are standing by an elm that was cut.
yes.
How do you feel about that?
Very sad.
Why?
Why? Because it could have been saved. Why? Because there's very few elms, and it was a healthy tree, and this lot is not rented, and from what I understand, therefore it's an orphan tree in our new category, and the town should have picked it up and pruned it on one side and maintained the tree over the next.
How close was it to these hydro lines?
Well, that side was a bit close. I mean, I don't know the measurements, but it could have been, pruned on one side and left this side over the canopy, over the path.
Did it hang over the path on this side before?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And how old do you think this tree was?
Well, maybe 20, 30 years, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Hydro Québec has brought into the south its cutting habits from the north of Quebec or from the Gaspé. Do you think that's a fair criticism?
Yes, because they don't want to come back all the time. They want to simplify their work, and it's like if they clear everything, they don't have to come back. I mean, I understand when way up north, and if there's a power outage and they have to send a crew, it costs a fortune to do that. But there's teams on the island, there's offices on the island, and the argument is like they could come back and prune, they could come back and maintain, because it's not like sending people by airplane or up, like a 2-day drive or 3 days.
So in your view, this tree should have been considered a quote orphan unquote tree and should have been saved.
Yes.
Okay, you're standing in front of another tree. Tell us about this one.
This is an ash, and it's growing in more than one direction. And the owner of the property agrees with Hydro to have it cut down, because he's worried that his grandkids will get hurt if it falls.
Okay. And I notice here that there's been a cut there. What's that about?
Well, I think they're starting. It's to clear the path so the trucks can get in.
And this tree is marked with a blue splotch of paint. What's that about?
Well, that's the original marks that were in September that they're possible tree to be cut, and it's definitely going to be cut.
Do you think this tree should be cut or pruned?
Pruned.
Do you think?
Especially, the owner is scared that it might fall over because Hydro explained him about all this arcing and this whole fear tactics. So he crumble and say, okay, I don't want to, he's scared. Well, the tree's going to fall. I mean, if you can notice, there are more than one. There's a smaller offshoot on this side that could be taken out, and the major one that's growing on the path could remain. And it won't affect him or his kids because it's on the this side of the fence. So this is more like the community side, the community tree. His side, if he wants to cut that, then okay,
Again, you're suggesting here a similar idea to the elm further down the lane here, and that is prune it on one side and get it, in fact, to grow over the lane.
Well, it actually is over the lane right?
Right.
And it creates shade and a cooling area to walk in the summer when it's really hot. And when you walk here in the winter, it creates a windbreak, a little bit of a shelter. And the birds, you can hear the birds.
One of the good things about trees is that they attract birds, right?
Correct.
And birds nest in them.
Yes, and it's June, and apparently there's a provincial bylaw saying can't cut trees during nesting season.
So the birds like the trees like the birds, you like the trees. Something's wrong here in this script. Somebody doesn't like the birds and the trees.
And it's raining now, if you can see, and we're both standing under this canopy and we're not getting wet. So there's another advantage.
So who doesn't like the birds and the trees then in this story?
Hydro.
Who?
Hydro Québec.
Is that what you feel?
Well, like I said, the priority is getting the job done and keeping the lines free, and so everybody in Hydro, and all its clients will have power.
Now you're standing in front of another tree, Louise. What is this?
It's an ash, and I've been watching this ash. It's one of my favorite trees because it has such a perfect canopy, and I took a lot of pictures of it last fall. It was a beautiful color, and I noticed all the leaves were healthy. And ashes, usually if they're sick with the Admiral ash borer, you start seeing one branch starting to go, another branch to go, and this tree had no branches. I mean, it was really healthy. In the spring I was looking for buds, and it was full of buds. Every branch had buds, so I said this tree is healthy and it's worth saving.
What do you think about the way it's been cut?
I'm horrified this morning because yesterday I was talking to the technician, and he told me that this lot is not rented. Therefore, it would be an orphan tree, and again, like the elm, being an orphan tree, the town could and should perhaps adopt it or have it adopted and care for it. And I said, don't worry, we'll start by cutting. We had to prune it anyways. We'll prune the wire side. Okay, we'll start by doing that. And what they did was took the center out instead.
So they did the exact opposite of what he told you they would do.
Well, essentially, I mean, so basically they have to cut off the side from the wires. The center's gone.
Yeah, the side that's near the wires has been left, and the center has been taken away.
So,
now that honestly doesn't make sense in terms of what the man told you. Is this a lack of connection between the hydro man and the contractors?
I don't know, he was with the contractors and he was standing with them and they started to cut. So, and the contractor was standing there when I had a discussion with him. So,
so this has either been done deliberately or foolishly.
Or both.
Now you've pointed out this to me. Why?
Well, because it's a beautiful canopy and it's the birds are loving it, and it's raining and it's pretty dry in here, and it's kind of nice.
You know, sometimes people say it's important to think big. So here I have an idea for you, that you and your committee and the residents of Montreal West invite experts from Sweden, Finland and Russia to come here and talk about modern contemporary ways of cutting trees near power lines in big cities where people live. What do you think about that? A tree cutting conference, how to properly cut trees.
That would be amazing.
Are you going to work on that?
That would be a good idea.
En el centro de la pampa vive un pimiento. Sol y viento pa' su vida, sol y viento.